I will go ahead and call to order the City of Burlington's Board of Finance on Tuesday, February 17th, 2026. It is 5:02 p.m. Our first item is the agenda. Is there a motion on the agenda?
Adopt the agenda.
Moved by Councilor Travers, seconded by Councilor Carpenter. Thank you. Any discussion on the agenda before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to our second item, public forum. Public forum is the practice of the Board of Finance to go to members of the public in the room first and then online. And if we have a number of folks, we'll use City Council rules, which about 2 minutes or so per person. And first we'll go to members of the public in the room. Is anyone here who would like to address the Board of Finance? Come on up, and we have a kind of a less formal scenario here. So you can join us right here at the table, and if we might introduce yourself, and then I'll sleep keep eye on. Okay, perfect. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for the time. My name is Eliana Fox. I live in Ward 7. I am the Vice Chair of the Public Works Commission. And I'm speaking today on behalf of myself and the Chair, Chris Damiani, who can't be here, but we shared a letter with councilors earlier today, and then send that. So we're here today, Board of DPW's request to execute a service contract for the residential recycling program and subsequent consolidated collection facility study. During our November 2025 meeting, the commission voted 6-1 in favor of supporting staff's recommendation to contract out residential recycling services. As you know, this vote was purely symbolic, but was grounded in strong rationale. DPW's mission is to steward Burlington's infrastructure and environment by delivering efficient, effective, and equitable public services, and the current recycling system does not meet this mission. We're primarily concerned with the morale of DPW staff. For example, these staff are having to backfill recycling shifts after prior overnight snow plowing shifts. The AFSCME memo describes this back-to-back work as constantly being in the firefighting mode. We appreciate that the council has supported recycling staff hiring through wage raises and hiring bonuses. However, those efforts have been unsuccessful, and the current setup is not equitable to those employees whose primary job function is street or equipment maintenance. We hope that contracting out that recycling service will relieve these staff from having to backfill recycling and be able to focus more on their billable work, like servicing police, fire, parks, and BED vehicles, maintaining sidewalks, or patching potholes. Focusing on this kind of billable work is also financially beneficial, which is an important consideration given the strained FY27 budgets. We understand that there is some concern over loss of jobs. However, DPW will maintain the existing recycling staff through other openings in this department. We support this direction because it will enable the department to provide one less service, recycling, to the benefit of the myriad of other crucial public services of the department overseas. Contracting the recycling service will give DPW leadership and staff the time and space to reduce operational burdens, focus on policy priorities of both the council and the mayor, and to seriously study a fully consolidated collection system for Burlington. We urge councilors to support that. Thank you for your time and careful consideration.
Thank you very much for being here. Anyone else would like to address the Board of Finance?
I was asked to speak on behalf of the flea maintenance shop.
Introducing yourself for the sake of the board.
My name is Bruce Bridge. I've worked for the flea maintenance garage for 10 years. And during that time, a lot of my experience with the heavy trucks, including recycling trucks. And some of the negative impact that recycling trucks have had on flea is the recycling cannot stop. It's scheduled, it goes on every day. And recycling is a severe service application. It's extremely hard on braking systems and air systems. When a truck breaks down, we have to stop whatever we're doing, whether it's a fire truck or police car, as we heard earlier, ED truck, and we have to go fix the recycling truck. If we can fix it, then we're left with a spare, or in some cases, there is no spare. So that puts a higher workload on the recycling staff. They're trying to double up with less vehicles. And from a mechanic standpoint, the weather is, a lot of it's weather dependent. Those trucks have air systems, when it's both freezing, a lot of the functions freeze, which compounds the issue exponentially. So basically, the technicians have to be outside working on those things, trying to figure out where they're frozen, what's not working, and how to get them back on the road. And also how to keep them on the road, because even if you store it inside, as soon as you're outside, now they're freezing again. It's something we've gotten by with, but it is difficult. It's take away from the schedule of operations of our shop. But I was just asked to portray this. That's it.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Anyone else in the room who would like to address Board of Finance? So we'll go online. I have former City Councilor Sharon Busher. Good evening, Sharon. Welcome. Floor is yours. Can you hear us, Sharon?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Go ahead. Welcome.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The little blue, anyways, I didn't think I hit it. So I wanted to, first of all, compliment the city on the audit report. It's excellent. And I hope that people at the Board of Finance and the citizens of Burlington appreciate all the hard work that this reflects. We don't do the audit. It's an external auditor, but they have found no significant problems. Having said that, I did want to call your attention to one thing that actually existed when I was on the board, and I got off the city council in 2020. And that item is timely entries at year-end reporting. And some of them, they say, are 6 months out. Now, I understand that this is challenging, but I think what's missing here for the public is that what is the percent of late entries? I mean, the city has been working on this, so I imagine that there's been improvement, but I'm not able to know that. And I think people could draw the wrong conclusion. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how big is the problem? Is it focused on one area where the workload is unreasonable for one person to make all those entries in a timely fashion at the end of year? So I think that it would be helpful for the city, the Board of Finance, and for the public to have that information so we know we're making progress. So that's my comment on the audit, but it's an excellent report. The second thing I wanted to speak on has already been a topic that you've heard about, is recycling. And, you know, there are always different opinions, and I'm not a mechanic, and I'm not on the Public Works Commission. I'm a resident, and I like the recycling program, just like I like having a public utility, just like I like having our water utility, our water department, which we went through some hard times with on that. As a resident, I value programs that we provide by the city. The state of the trucks are factual. They're falling apart. We ordered trucks, and then during the pandemic, there was a delay, or Chapin will, the director will speak to that more completely and accurately, but we let that go because there was some delay. So part of that is our decision not to order new trucks. That's why there's so much maintenance. So I just want to call that out. But the point that I'm concerned about is, I looked at the information presented, and I see thank you, Director Spencer and the department, for providing the chart that shows the increase, not only the CPI increase, but the fuel, et cetera, increases. So and other fees that could be passed on over the 7-year period. I appreciated that. I am concerned that the CPI is assumed at one point, and it could be more. So I am concerned about the overall cost. So that gets me to the last ask or consideration. As a resident, I do not want this added to my property tax. I want to be able to control some of the costs that I incur living in Burlington. And I will take my compost and my recycling and my waste, unfortunately, because I'm closer to South Burlington's depot than Burlington's, I'll take it there. And then I can control those costs. I don't want that added to my property tax. I don't think that's fair. I think it's really unfortunate that this issue is very significant for the residents, and we didn't have a chance to have any say in this. Any advisory question on a ballot, nothing. We, as residents, don't have say on this, and I think that is unfortunate. Thank you.
Karen, is there anyone else online who would like to address the Board of Finance and Public Forum? Raise your Zoom hand. Not seeing anyone else. So with that, I will close public forum and we will move on to our next item, which is our consent agenda. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Adopt the consent agenda.
Moved by Councilor Childers. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Barlow. Thank you. Any further discussion on the consent agenda before we vote? Being none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. On to our first deliberative agenda item 4.1, which is the acceptance and use of congressionally directed spending for the post building fit up by CEDO. Our CEDO director / technically interim chief of staff at the moment, but sitting with her hat on for CEDO.
Sorry, the interim CEDO director is out today.
No worries.
So I'm filling in quickly.
Thank you, Barb. We should be here to stand in very well. I will give it up to you.
CEDO applied for and received $300,000 from Senator Sanders' congressionally directed spending program. And this was to be used or is to be used for the fit up of the ground floor of the post apartments. In that newly renovated space, our Community Justice Center will be moving in there for better meeting space, larger accommodations, and we have, with City Council approval, signed a lease agreement to that effect. However, we did discover that the grant was unfortunately accepted without Board of Finance or Council approval. So I am coming for retroactive approval for that. That includes a budget amendment that will take the $300,000 into FY26's budget and also create an expense line of $300,000 to pay Champlain Housing Trust for the bid up that was agreed to. So this is just a retroactive approval to finalize those payments coming in and then going out to CHT for the post apartments.
Thank you, Carla. Let's open it up for questions or comments from the board. Councilor Carpenter.
I'm just curious, who owns the space?
CHT owns the building and CJC will be a tenant of CHT.
How come they didn't go to CHT? Just curious.
How?
The grant.
The congressionally directed spending, I don't know how Senator Sanders does that and why the application was filed by CEDO. I can try and get you that information.
More
as well.
curiosity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I do know the answer to that. Is because the funds were coming from the Department of Justice, and so they were to be used for the CJC rather than for the fit up of a building. It wasn't related to a CHT project. It was related to support of alternative justice.
Other questions or comments? Okay, we have a full agenda, so if the board is ready, I'll see if there's a motion. Not looking to rush us necessarily. So there's a motion.
I would move the motion as presented on the civic clerk.
And Council Carpenter, there's 3 parts to it, so just want to talk about.
I will move all 3 parts.
Thank you very much. Moved by Councilor Carpenter. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Barlow. Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion?
Or you vote.
Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Alright, moving on to item 4.2, she's gonna stay there. A request for an exemption from the city's livable wage ordinance requirement for paid vacation for our Burlington-led program, which sits within CEDO. So Cara, take it away.
Yeah, so Jesus, who owns JM Environmental, it is a family-owned business. He and his wife own it and run it jointly, and their two full-time employees are their sons. They do not offer paid vacation. Instead, when the family goes on vacation, the business closes. They do they do pay an hourly wage that is in line with our livable wage ordinance, and they do pay their workers for sick time. The workers I am mentioning, aside from their sons, they do have some part-time seasonal workers. They are asking for an exemption from the paid vacation requirement of our livable wage ordinance. Another aspect that brings us to you right now is Burlington, Vermont rather, has so few certified lead abatement specialists. We currently only have 3 that we work with in Burlington. One of them is not currently taking any new projects on, so we only have 2, one of which would be JM. And without them, we'd be down to 1, which I don't feel gives us a competitive enough bidding process, so that we worry about expending the grant too soon and going above some of the limits that HUD sets for this lead remediation. Given that we feel this is a family business and it's run a little bit differently, and that they are willing to sign, that they do provide paid sick time in accordance with the state, and in addition, that they do pay at or above our livable wage ordinance, I am looking for an exemption for the paid vacation portion, which I said, since the entire business is family owned, they close down if they all go on vacation as a family.
All right, questions from the board or comments? Council Carpenter.
How long is the exemption for?
The exemption is for each contract that we would sign with them. So every time we sign a contract with them,
Okay.
it would be for the job that they need to execute. And then they would be signed, that contract would have the livable wage ordinance tacked onto it.
The reason I ask is I'm comfortable with it now. If they get big time,
Yeah,
at what point could we intercede and say, no, we're not gonna give you the exemption anymore? I guess that's what I'm going for, asking. We put in that at some periodic time, we make sure that they don't have 10 employees rather than 2.
yes, that I understand. I believe with each contract, we could have the right to say, no, sorry, we'd like you to sign, you know, the full livable wage ordinance. But I could write into it right now that we could do an annual check with them. If that's preferable, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Councilor. Anything further? Councilor Travers?
Yeah, just following up on Councilor Carpenter's comments here. How long would we anticipate the contract here would be if we awarded to this company?
So these contracts would generally run 6 to 10 months max to get the work done.
Okay. So with that in mind, if it's contract based, then I'm fine with it as is. We would have to renew it every time that there's a new contract out, so we would have to do it annually necessarily. I will note, just because I took a dive into the livable wage ordinance earlier today, that section 2186 provides that these exemptions cannot exceed 2 years. So if we had a contract that was longer than 2 years, we would not be able to, under our ordinance, provide an exemption longer than that, and instead would require the company to come back and to renew the exemption at that point in time. I will just note here, I appreciate very much, Cara, some correspondence that we had earlier today, and you're mentioning here that the full-time employees are family members of the family that owns this company. And I think that if that were not the case, then I would be more reluctant to approve of this exemption, given that there are other companies, right? If they were the only company, sure,
Yes.
but there are other companies that provide this. And I will also note that under our livable wage ordinance, even part-time seasonal workers are supposed to be provided paid time off on a prorated basis. And so we are offering an exemption here to that extent. I appreciated your confirming for me earlier today that the company does offer paid sick leave
Yes.
in accordance with the Vermont Earned Sick Leave Act. And so based on those unique circumstances, I will be supportive of this, but just want to express out loud that it is, I think, supported here by the unique circumstances of this family-owned company, and not something that if the circumstances were different, that I necessarily would support.
Okay, noted and understood. I will pass this on to staff as well and make sure that we do a regular review of this if we continue to move forward with them. I will also note that there is a workforce development grant not held by the city, held by someone else in the state, specifically to train more lead abatement workers to try and get rid of this bottleneck that we're seeing in this industry.
Unrelated to this, but I think I've mentioned this to you before at our looking at whether we should keep a standalone lead program or whether we should be talking to the state more.
Yes.
Question.
Yep, and I do recognize that. I will say that this HUD program pays for 93% of the salaries of the workers, so 7% is covered by general fund and all other expenses are covered by the grant. But we are in year 2 of a 4-year grant, and we could discuss whether we would be applying for renewal or not.
And it's not that it hasn't been a fact, as a job and the employees are all good, it's more at a low admin fee, how much of a distraction it is for the city and the department. So.
Yes, yep, no, I noted, yeah.
Any further questions? Or we see if there's a motion? Is there a motion?
Make the motion as indicated in the civil clerk.
Councilor Barlow, is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Carpenter. Any further discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. On to item 4.3, which is a 7-year plan for residential recycling collection and consolidated collection study with our Department of Public Works. Welcome, team.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You will.
I happy to pick it up. Chapin Spencer, Director of Public Works. I'm joined by Lee Perry, our Division Director of Maintenance. We also have the whole people there here. President of ASME, and you heard earlier from Eliana Fox, the chair of our commission, and we have representatives from Casella here as well. If there are any questions for the proposed contracted hauler. So thank you all for the time and effort over the past year to discuss this very complex issue. To the counselors, ASME leadership, city staff, commissioners, and the public, we really appreciate the engagement over this last year. The city's commitment to solid waste continues to get stronger. Besides the recycling program we're talking about tonight, just to put it in context, last year for the first time we put general fund dollars into maintaining the landfill at Manhattan Drive. First time in a long time. We also last year purchased 201 Flint Avenue to create a unified soil management area for the city's soils. As we dig in urban areas, we often have contaminated soils that we need to manage cost effectively before reusing or disposing. We worked with CSWD a couple of years ago to expand services at the 339 Pine Street Drop-Off Center. And tonight, the 2 actions in front of you, one is to continue the city's residential recycling collection. but propose to do it in a different way. The city would continue to see it, the city would continue to sell toters and set policy, but we're proposing to contract the service for 7 years. In addition, and relatedly, looking to launch a feasibility study on a full consolidated collection system of trash, solid recycling and compost, recognizing that our current fractured system in the city is complex and not as efficient as it could be. So these two actions are in front of you tonight. We, in the memo, and thank you for your patience and perseverance getting through the 10 attachments that were in today's packet. Hopefully you found them responsive to your questions and interests over these months. We've definitely benefited from meeting with many counselors. There are 3 top line messages as to why I am recommending moving ahead with these 2 actions tonight. One is protecting DPW's workforce. You heard in public forum some of the impacts. I would say more of the impacts even beyond equipment maintenance, which yes, are fleet related, and if we had new equipment, it wouldn't be as much of a burden. But in street maintenance, we are seeing, as you saw in the memo, a lack of production around our billable work. We are contractors for the city, earning billable money, reconstructing sidewalk, rebuilding catch basins, and serving as the city's contractor. Our ability to earn that revenue is severely compromised when we get pulled off into recycling. Number 2, we need space to be able to take the big look at a fully consolidated collection system in the city. This is no easy task, and trying to do the day-to-day operation while we are studying a major change in how solid waste is collected we do not have the capacity to do both of those well at the same time. So if we can give ourselves space by contracting out the operation, we can then focus with you, with the commission, with the public on evaluating feasibility of a fully consolidated collection system. And number 3, this recommendation does save the general fund money, especially during a strained FY27 budget season, while also expanding certain services to customers. And I will touch on that in a brief second. You saw in the packet, there was a financial spreadsheet that looked at different line items in our budget. Those are just some of the budget line items in DPW's budget, but the ones that would materially be different between a contract and an in-house operation or recycling. We hope you found that beneficial. The analysis indicated that there was a savings of approximately $200,000 in FY27 for a contracted recycling operation. We talked about the operational considerations, the new services. So the contractor has some ability to provide services that we aren't well suited to provide. One service is holiday collection. They are able to pick up recycling on almost all holidays, and but for the major holidays, and on the major holidays, they are prepared to pick up on the following Saturday for everybody who was missed. This is something we have not been able to do. We have talked about it for years, but have not had the staff to be able to do that. And the second item is backdoor/custom service. There are many types of developments that have, different housing mixes, an 8 to 10 unit building that may be all rentals. They don't have an on-site property manager, and the property owner gets frustrated if none of the tenants figure out how to bring the recycling forward. Or there may be a senior who lives in a house and is unable to bring the toter to the street. Casella would be willing to provide backdoor service for an extra fee that would be worked out with the customer directly. We have not been able to provide that service, and so that would be a new offering. We did reference checks. You'll see in the memo, we talked to other municipalities that have similar contract and solid waste collection services and found very positive reviews. The contract provisions, we did look in a very close fashion to the contract and the proposal from Casella. There were a number of pieces that required further negotiation. You'll see items in here. We were successful in ways of protecting the city's interest. If we get, because of the housing construction or the interest in having more residents take advantage of municipal collection of recycling, we have now a price for additional residential dwelling units above the 13,000 that was bid on. We also got a better arrangement on the fuel surcharge than was originally proposed. And Casella's committed to pursuing grants for electrifying the fleet. And if they secure grants, they will prioritize our service for their next electrification. I think just heading towards a conclusion, there is an absolute commitment from me, from the leadership of DPW, to undertake a full evaluation of a consolidated collection system in the city for residential customers. We know that there has been some concern with the fragmented system that we have, and that we have done studies before and really struggled to move the needle. That's why we're proposing to clear the decks and try to get the operations to be simpler for us, so that management leadership can spend the time to do this evaluation right. You'll see a proposed scope in the packet of what that evaluation would look like, and we would fully engage the public and the council in this multi-year effort feasibility study. So you'll see our recommendations in the memo. The attached resolution, we're seeking your recommendation to forward this to the council, both for the authorizing a contract as well as for the consolidated collection study. And if you want to hear from us or any of our stakeholders, happy to answer questions. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I'm done with questions.
Great.
To the board, then opening up for discussion. Councilor Barlow.
So you all know that I have been supportive of this all since we've started discussing it. I think it's important to point out to residents who are watching this meeting or following this process that we aren't privatizing recycling in the city. What we're doing is we are contracting out the collection portion of recycling for 7 years. I think that's important because to most residents, it's not going to look much different except for maybe Casella branding on the truck that shows up weekly. The truck's going to come pick up their blue toter that they purchased from the city. If they have issues, they can call DPW still. And so we're contracting out a service, and this is not unusual. We contract with many other businesses for city needs, for legal work, for street work, for security. So this is not without precedent or at all unusual. And through this resolution, we're also setting up a commitment to evaluate a fully consolidated collection model and giving ourselves enough runway to do it, which I think is important. I have not been supportive of consolidated collection in the past. I think the private sector does a great job as their core competency, but I think there's a place to evaluate it if it can be cheaper, less expensive for residents with a consolidated model. So I'm fully open to exploring that. And lastly, I'd say, this move solves a resourcing issue we've been hearing about for 2 years in 2 community council. It will save money in a tight fiscal environment. It has the support of ASME, DPW leadership, and the administration. And so I think it's, I'm hopeful that the council will support it. So that's my thinking on this. I don't have any other questions because I know we've talked about it exhaustively.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Councilor Carpenter.
I just want to say I support Councilor Barlow's comments and to say, I do support consolidated collection, but there's no reason we shouldn't be also looking at whether contracting that or not is gonna be the right move. You know, as I think in some previous stuff, it gave us 60% of the municipalities that do this do contract out, so I don't think we need to be afraid of that.
Councilor King.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. The resolution does very clearly, and I want to make it clear myself, that we will look at both a municipally run an operated model versus a contract model. Both of those options would be on the table. And we would want to compare that to a subscription-based model, which is how trash is picked up in Burlington currently, that haulers are allowed to buy for each individual customer.
Other comments from the board? Councilor Traps.
Yeah, I'll just note, not to repeat what Councilors Barlow and Carpenter said, I think that they said it very well with respect to there being all sorts of city services where we have been faced with circumstances where it makes sense, as here, to contract out that work. You know, I will say that as a principled matter, I understand why some of our colleagues on the council, myself included, honestly, as a principled matter, would have preferred that we be able to keep our recycling service in-house, would prefer that we have a path to, if we're going to have a consolidated collection model, to keep that in-house in the city. But when we're faced with circumstances where, and with gratitude to Kobe and his AFSCME colleagues for the work that they're doing, where they are telling us that this is not sustainable, what choice do we have as a community? You know, principal is not going to pick up my blue bin on Mondays. And so I appreciate all the work that's gone into this, very much appreciate the partnership with our AFSCME colleagues, very much give some weight to the work of the Public Works Commission as well, and the 6-1 vote there, albeit advisory. I'm glad that they took that vote to put their stamp of approval on this for us to move in this direction. Just a couple brief notes, although I will be voting in favor of this between now and if and when the council takes this up in March. In the resolution itself, with respect to the city council standing up a committee to review the consolidated collection model, two things. One is, I do think we could get more specific about how the city council is going to establish that committee. It just says the city council is going to establish that committee. Is it the council president? Is this a separate ad hoc committee? How many members will there be? Could it just be the two? Would the two be interested in something like that? So I think we have some work to do on that front between now and our next meeting. And the other is, whereas I think that it makes sense that this work would not begin until FY28, which we see that 28. Remember that FY28 is actually July 1 of 2027, which is not as far off as we may think. And I think that makes sense because I think we should have a year under our belt of doing this or close to that, such that we have some numbers to look at, some understanding as to potentially some savings that have realized where is our city staff at that point in time. I don't know that we want that to be sort of the floor of when this work could begin. So I'd like us to consider whether or not we could allow that committee work to begin sooner than FY28, and think about whether or not that's the direction that we want to go in. If there's counselors that in our next council year want to start taking this on right away, then I wouldn't want the resolution to preclude us from beginning some of that preliminary work prior to July of next year. So those are just my two specific notes on the resolution where I'd like to support some changes on that front before our next council meeting, but otherwise I'll be supporting the initiative tonight.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other comments? Councilor Newbeezer.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation, and obviously, Director Chapin, we've talked a number of times on this.
Yep.
I am very much not supportive of going down this route, and I think we're going to look back at this in a number of years and view it as a mistake. I completely respect my day job is representing public employees, organizing them, I should say. And so absolutely understand that sort of the challenges with implementing different programs in the public sector. And certainly there are real challenges around hiring, which we've I actually think quite cost effectively and successfully have addressed, and we should continue on that path. I really think that the challenges outlined, the savings outlined, and what the cost looks like in the future just does not come close to selling off this public function of our city government. And while I take Councilor Barlow's point earlier, I mean, I don't know the word other than privatization for it. I think that is what it is. I don't, I don't want to argue about vocab, but I do think that's what it is, and I think we should be upfront about that. So I will leave it there. I know there's more discussion to be had before the actual council meeting. And we'll follow up, anticipating the vote of the Board of Finance here. We'll follow up with folks before we take this up to council. Thanks.
Councilor, I'm going to weigh in just briefly for the sake of this debate as mayor, because I want to make sure that folks know where I stand on this particular issue. We've been talking about it for months as an exploration of a possibility for the city for a number of reasons. And this was not an easy decision for me as mayor. I spent most of my career in the labor movement, and this is usually something that would pause anyone who has ties to unions. And I just want to state that this is the result of months of deliberations within our DPW department, working closely with our AFSCME leadership, which is the union that represents these staff members, these employees, and city councilors to really understand the full operational challenges facing the city with being the operator of recycling services. But to keep this program running, we have been pulling employees into jobs that they were never hired to do and reassigning them to recycling routes. We have a service reality here we have to grapple with as a city. And these employees deserve to be heard from us as the elected leaders of this city about what we keep putting them in that position for, which we heard in public forum at city council around the essential service work we're pulling them out of and putting them back into with this snow plowing or street sidewalk maintenance or road work, as you heard from others. And this is not sustainable for the hardworking employees who work day in and day out for the city. I also want to really underscore my appreciation for AFSCME leadership on this, for engaging in really constructive conversations and helping us to center worker safety in a lot of these conversations, as well as what's fair to our city staff. This is an unusual and important position for a union to take. As I said, I used to actually organize around true privatizing efforts in the public schools in the state of Vermont. What is unique here is that we maintain public oversight. That is not something that is done in other employment status, like contracting out custodial work or food service work, which is classic in the school district area of work that I used to do. This is truly contracting out services, much like our security and has been mentioned in other ways. So I actually disagree with my colleague on this one, that there is a nuance here that's a very important one around public oversight that's not in the case in many other privatizing service situations. And I also think it's informed by the realities that the members of AFSCME face every single day, and we owe it to them to hear their direct feedback and their direct requests to us around what they were hired to do, frankly, and the impacts that this has had on them as staff. We also are in a very difficult budget cycle, and so we have to make hard decisions about the services that are essential and core, and where services can be done otherwise, which the city does not take the lead in. And then finally, in terms of the future of this, this does not signal a retreat from the city in terms of our commitment to recycling. It's a pragmatic pause in this work to make sure that we do our due diligence of understanding what would get us to, in my mind, a better approach of integrating our waste collection and making sure the city's in a place where it can do that from a position of strength. That is just not our reality right now. And so sometimes you have to be a pragmatic leader who balances the core fundamental values, but also always fundamentally listening to our city staff and specifically our union. And that is why I'm supportive of this proposal and our team bringing this forward, because to me, that is where my obligation is as mayor, is to always listen to our city staff fundamentally. So with that, thank you for letting me engage in the debate briefly. I will go back to the board to see if there is a motion on this item, knowing we have a few other items to get to tonight. Is there a motion or further discussion, Councilor Barlow?
I move to approve the attached resolution and recommend that the city council waive the reading.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Travers. Thank you. Any final words or comments from the board before we vote? Okay, seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
Yes.
So the vote for the record is 4 ayes and 1 nay. So Councilor Hughes are voting in the negative. Is that right? Yes. Okay. And with that, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, DPW. I'm going to move on now to another DPW item, item 4.4, which is related to Y stand for, not fiscal year.
Yes,
Calendar
calendar year.
Your multiple years from calendar year 26, because that's how we do paving in the city of Burlington. This is regarding our paving contract authorization to award from our Department of Public Works. Chapin, back to you.
Yes, thank you. I know this time of year paving is a popular topic, so we are pleased to be here, and we have Corey Mims, who's our senior public works engineer virtually, and Caleb Mann, a public works engineer as well. And I think Caleb, you're going to kick it off for us.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chapin. So the request in front of you tonight is to award the calendar year 2026 paving contract. We had extremely advantageous bids this time around. We solicited bids from 4 companies. Historically, we've gotten bids from 2 companies. So it was nice to see a really competitive bid process and something that I think we can feel really good about from the city. The prices came in lower than we had anticipated. The engineer's estimate for this contract was about $2.1 million. Pike Industries is the low bidder, and they came in just below 1.6 million. We're pretty happy with those prices, and we hope to do a fair amount of paving this year. Excuse me. This year's contract a little bit bigger in previous years. We're looking at about 2.1 miles of street roadways that will be resurfaced. And we still have a little bit of work left to complete from CY25. So you can expect to see a fair amount of paving around the city this year. And again, we were extremely pleased on the pricing we got from the bid results.
Maybe just to wrap up, I'd say, you know, our sustainable level of paving is approximately 4 miles a year. We are struggling to hit that. We really appreciate the work of the capital committee and balancing the needs of the various city assets. This is a strong step, but we would like to figure out how to get higher.
And just one more thing to add there. We are currently exploring the option of either adding additional scope of work to this contract or procuring a separate contract. Exactly what that would be remains to be seen, but that is something we're contemplating at this point.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Councilor Carpenter.
Just gonna ask that question. Driving around and walking around a lot, is there some capacity to do more?
There is some capacity
Yeah.
financially.
Yeah.
We want to be, I think we learned last year, the city has a limit as to how much construction folks can reasonably handle. So we want to be cognizant of that.
There's neighborhood street paving too, and I think we all hear probably not about Main Street. I wouldn't care about that too, but I mean.
Right.
I think there's options
Yeah.
on the table, and it's not a terrible position
Yeah.
to be in by any means.
When we have limited money, often the money gets dedicated towards collector streets, because those are the critical ones for emergency services and transport, you know, key transportation corridors. When there is money available in this very advantageous bid, it may give us that opportunity. There are a couple of neighborhood streets in this year's paving, like Cumberland Road, which we know we've heard from those residents for several years. So
We're starting to get to a good place where our arterials are in decent shape. You know, the metric we use is called the PCI, the Pavement Condition Index. So we feel the main roadways are in an acceptable place. So this will allow us to start tackling some of those lesser traveled residential roads that are not in pristine condition.
Questions, Councilor Barlow?
Yes, I was extremely happy to read the memo and see a couple of the streets that I get repeated calls about. The annual significant attention that are on the mill and fill list. So you're gonna take my inbox down about maybe some of the work this summer. I did have a question about what the process will be. Like, as this becomes public and people see their street isn't on here, and there's incoming calls about that and arguments made as to why they should be. I'm wondering what the process will be. Obviously, the paving condition index is one measure, but how will you decide? There's no one to it.
That's a great question, and it's something we get almost annually, I'd say. We had presented a larger 5-year paving forecast to the Public Works Commission in November. So we have a rough idea of kind of where we want to go over the next couple of years, subject to change. Obviously, winter like this, we know some roads are gonna suffer more than others. So it's always a revolving wheel. Having this extra money does allow for us to start to look at some of these streets that we know we get complaints and comments about more often than not too. So it's something we're always looking at and something we're always factoring in. And it's something we, it may not come next year, but we do have a list and that can fall into that list where it makes sense too. A lot of times we try to put together, in this contract in particular, we try to group streets close to each other. It saves a lot of money moving all that equipment around. And really, I feel help get the bid results that we got this year.
Council Carpenter, and I'm just mindful of time.
Okay, just one more, and we can see about that line in other controversial conversations we've had about unaccepted streets. I think the degree to which there's also a lot of money to fix whatever we need and take those off the table. And we'll get to that in terms of what standards you have to meet. I think
Right.
some of them, that's fine. It's just sort of, I'm just tossing that out there.
Yeah. That'll be a key element down the road. Once we have a council directed policy, then we can discuss, do we need some funding to execute that policy direction?
That's right.
I'll be brief here. So this is all good news and I will be supportive of it. My main concern in reviewing it was that there is one main drag in and out of the city that's on the proposal this year, and that's Colchester Avenue. We know that this past summer, that folks ran into some navigation difficulties with our downtown. I know that we don't have an exact calendar as to when the paving work will take place, but in approving of the contract, I just want to be clear that it would be my expectation, and I'm sure it would be your expectation as well, that the timing of that paving is hopefully well coordinated with navigability issues in our downtown. I know whether we like to talk about it or not, that we still have some work to do on Main Street. There's potentially some intersection closures that are turning back on as we finish that project. And I think it could be not great if paving on Colchester Avenue also coincided with other road closures along Main Street. So if there's any way you have to wait until later in the season, I trust you all and defer to you all as the experts, but just wanted to note that such that we don't run into the unanticipated issues down the line.
Fair point. Paving mill and fill is very different than construction.
Sure.
There will be traffic through the area. We will also have to balance it with UVM move in and the increase in traffic that happens
The
in
hospital right
September.
there too. So yeah, we know there's some.
We hear your point. We'll work on it.
I will say Pike has a great reputation of doing big, long stretches of road. They predominantly do highway work or, state roads. So I feel they're experienced in handling large roadways with high volumes of traffic.
And with that, is there a motion? Council Barlow?
I'll make the two-part motion as indicated.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Chavez. Thank you. Any further discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to Burlington Electric Department, item 4.5, which is a supplemental resolution number 20. The general bond resolution adopted by the Board of Electric Commissioners on October 7th, 1981. Good year.
Yes,
Welcome.
thanks.
I know you are up against the clock. Just to summarize very briefly, Emily's done a bunch of work with PFM, our debt advisor, as well as bond counsel. And you all had approved us issuing the new net zero energy bond. When we do that, we typically review the general bond resolution as well. And they suggested some timely modernization amendments, none of which would go into effect immediately if it was passed, but we would work with the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank, and they would be bondholders for roughly 50%, and they would be asked to consent to these changes, and then we would implement them once we had further down the road gotten to a point where 2/3 of the bondholders had implemented them. They're substantive, but I don't want to go into greater detail unless you have questions, given the time. But if you have questions, Emily can answer.
Any questions for BB?
How long have we been using the bond bank?
It's only our second issuance right now. First one was for the refunding we did last summer.
Any other comments or questions on this before I look for a motion? Thank you for letting me be efficient too. Is there a motion on this item? Councilor Barlow? Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Carpenter. Any further discussion on this item before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, and I'm gonna ask the board if we can hold 10 minutes here for the audit, because they've been holding on and it's an important presentation. And then we'll try to wrap up at that hour, 6:10 or so. So with that, our next item is item 5, a presentation of the draft audit results. It's from our Department of Finance Administration. And I'm gonna hand it over to Brad. Brad?
Thank you. Record, Brad Cooper, Director of Finance, and pleased to, and I can be pretty brief, but to present to you our results of the FY25 audit. We do, maybe for about a couple of minutes longer, have our representative from CBiz, who is our lead auditor, Alina Korsak, on the call in case we have any sticky questions that we know. She does have to jump off though, so if you do have something that we need to follow up on, we certainly can. But the long story short of our FY25 audit results, I won't bury the lead, is that some of the decisions that we've made, difficult decisions we've made over the last couple of years, seem to be paying off, both in terms of our budget development and our budget monitoring throughout the fiscal year. And we were able to add $1.3 million to the unassigned fund balance in fiscal 25, bringing the total to 7.4 million. And that's an increase in our debt management policy fund ratio of about 1 additional percent. So last year we were 7.2%. This year we are at 8.2%. The audit is, as former Councilor Sharon Busher noted, is something that we partner with an external company. And it has been a similar team over quite a number of years, predating me and possibly predating some other folks here and in our office. And they're an excellent team to work with. Extend a big thanks to them, as well as all of our city staff who put in long hours and dig through massive spreadsheets to come up with results required to prove to our citizens that we are keeping good track of our finances and holding ourselves accountable where necessary. I did want to respond to former Councilor Busher's comment regarding our recommendation. So The great news is that we had no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. All of these are very technical auditing type terms. You don't want to have any of those, but we didn't, which is great. But they do often provide recommendations for how things can improve year over year. And it is correct that recommendation number one from our audit team is to improve general ledger monitoring and adhere to a formal closing schedule. And by that, really, they mean is we, through our review of fiscal year 25 activity, had to make some adjustments to account properly for some key specific areas. And I want to offer a brief response now, but certainly would be happy to follow up with anybody in more detail offline. But we have looked into what are the transactions that occur for a fiscal year on the average of 5 to 6 months after, when the best practice by most accounting board standards are 90 days after the fiscal year. You should have all of those wrapped up. And they do kind of fall into two categories. There's some very complex loan debt and amortization type accounting that needs to occur, particularly around the state revolving loan fund that our water resources unit uses. And some of those kind of capital accounting changes that occur frequently based on boards like GASB or other groups that change some standards, and we have to, catch up. Those are areas in which I would say that myself and my team are a little, it's outside of our direct locus of control, but I don't want to shirk any responsibility or accountability. There are some areas that we've identified that are complex, but still well within our locus of control. And we've already dug into what we can do next year to remove this recommendation off the list. There's two other recommendations. One is a potential kind of legal interpretation that we've gone back and forth with our auditors and our city attorneys. That is ordinance language or CBAs, who gets the final say on pension related contributions and other types of activities. City defaults by practice to the CBAs for each particular group. But the city ordinance that guides that is makes a little bit of a gray area. So it's possible we could touch up that language if we working with the city attorney's office, so choose, and we could bring a recommendation forward for that. And the last one was to kind of fully implement a very secure way in which we set up our roles and responsibilities within our financial system. Now that is completely outside of our finance office, which conforms with best practice. And a big thank you to our IT department and Scott Parker, who were able to pick up that work for us and help us abide by these rules. So I think that has touched on all of the topics I was hoping to present. Happy to answer questions. Also happy to answer questions another time.
Take a couple questions here, so we have a little bit of time. 5 minutes. That's loads of time.
I'm just curious, the retirement language that conflicts with the CBA, sort of, how old is that? I mean, is it something?
It's pretty old. It's definitely any of our current last 2 rounds of bargaining, but I'd have to do some research to say it's even older than that. And there's really not, you can interpret it one way or the other, I think. And I think the auditor's recommendation is that we could shore that up to say we the city, defer in our ordinance to the agreed CBAs for these particular. kind of
I mean, it just seems like we should do that, and I don't think it should be a heavy lift, so.
No, it shouldn't. I'll work with the city attorney's office to get a proposal for this board in short order.
Counselor, other comments on this item, questions? Counselor Barlow.
I had the same question as Councilor Carpenter, is like, as we are entertaining the collective bargaining agreements, are we trying to look for the language? But it sounds like the approach is to change the ordinance to refer to whatever we agree to.
Yeah, I don't, I haven't go all the way into the history yet, but there must have been at some point in time that the ordinance kept up along with it, and then probably for some reason or another, it was easier to just defer to the contract and not continually update the ordinance, but we could write the ordinance in such a way that it works together, I think.
For another time maybe, but maybe we could get a listing of where there's those sort of consistencies.
Yeah, I mean, that's apropos of some of the other work that myself and our office is engaged in, so yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments on our audit? Draft.
Yay for management.
Yeah.
No, we're very late here, but it's good news around it.
Yeah, it's good news all.
It's living in your
Seven
normal
days.
professional way, Brad, just to be clear, but it is important and worth repeating around the
People don't understand
unassigned
that.
fund balance, especially given our reality as a city. So that is a very important piece to underscore, underline, put in bold. That is good news for the city's finances yet again. So thank you for calling that out. Anything else, members of the board? This is just a presentation. There was no action on this item.
We will come back just to say, and get official approval from this board and the city council. As you know, we have a consolidated financial with everyone, including the school. And so we have to wait for all the i's to be dotted and t's to be crossed. And so you'll see that in a few weeks, but we thought it was important to report out on this before town meeting day. And I think with that, we can wrap up.
All right, well, Brad, thank you very much. Catherine, thank you very much. Thank you to our auditors. Well, they're offline, but thank them for me, please. And with that, and no other deliberative items or items at all for the Board of Finance, I will adjourn the meeting at 6:09 p.m. Thank you very much.